vegan honey and oat sandwich loaf. Now I have just pulled it out of the oven, so I just wanted to give you a sneak peek of what we are making today. Look at that rise, woohoo! And what a lot of you folks don't know, a lot of what you folks are telling me that you didn't realize was sandwich bread is often not vegan. That's right, the sandwich bread that you buy sliced in the bag at the supermarket is often not vegan, and that's because it often contains dairy products and sometimes eggs. So if you have a look on the back of the pack, you might see things like dairy proteins like casein and things like this, or milk powders, or butter, and sometimes, as I mentioned, even eggs. But it's so simple to make your very own sandwich bread at home, and it's a fantastic skill to have to be able to make your very own bread. Now, I do get a lot of people who come to my baking course and they say, Jess, I'm a little bit nervous about all the yeasted breads. I've never made bread before. So today in this video, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks of how to make perfect bread every time, and how to watch out for all the little key things that is going to make your bread taste amazing. It's going to last longer on your kitchen bench, so you can enjoy it and share with friends and family, or for your food service business. So I have already started some of the steps a little bit ahead of time, so you can see all steps in this video. So I'm going to pop this guy aside. But if you are looking for the recipe, just click down and you will find the full recipe with all the method and instructions, and all the quantities is all there. There's no special ingredients at all in this recipe either. So when you have a look at it, you can print it out. It looks like this, the vegan honey and oat sandwich bread. Now, I know what you're saying, Jess, honey is not vegan. Honey is made from bees. However, if you jump onto the Vegan Gastronomy YouTube channel and look at the little search tool for vegan honey, you will actually find a recipe. We did a video on this a few weeks ago. So I have some vegan honey here that I'll be using, and it adds some incredible texture and flavor to your bread. So I'm going to just explain a little bit of what I've already done so we can continue on with this recipe. So the first ingredient that you're going to find in your recipe is something called fermented dough. Now, what is fermented dough? I hear you telling me. Well, basically fermented dough, it's a pre-fermented dough which you make. So the day before you go to bed, mix up these ingredients. It's just flour, water, yeast, and salt. Sit it on the kitchen bench for about 45 minutes and then pop it in the refrigerator for up to 2 days. So adding a fermented dough, or what we also call a pre-ferment, to your main dough is going to give not only flavor, but it's going to increase the beautiful texture of your bread, and also start incorporating some complex flavors. So you folks out there that like sourdough, this is going to incorporate more of those kind of sour notes and different types of notes. A lot of people I like to kind of explain it like a wine. You know how people talk about wine being like fruity or woody or having all these complex flavors. Adding a pre-ferment or a fermented dough is going to give your bread a lot of flavor. So I've already added my fermented dough along with our flour. So we're using half a kilo of flour today. And bread flour, or also known as strong flour, depending where you are in the world. You can use an all-purpose flour, but I do encourage you to use a bread flour if it's available to you. And then we added a little bit of water and some plant milk of your choice. Those are all mixed together and set aside for 30 minutes. And I have all those things in my bowl here. It's all mixed up and it was just rested for 30 minutes. We call this an auto-lease. So basically this is allowing the flour to hydrate or absorb all that moisture, and it's just going to be a lot easier for us to mix everything together, and again talking about texture and flavor. Okay, so this wouldn't be a honey and oat bread without honey or oats. And as I mentioned, we actually made our very own vegan honey here. And I've incorporated it here. I've just measured it out with my vegan margarine. You can use a soft margarine or this firm margarine, that's fine. Just make sure it's nice and soft and at room temperature. So I'm going to add this, along with my dough, which we've had auto-leasing for 30 minutes, we're just going to add that in there. And then to that, of course, we are adding our oats. So I'll bring you guys down so we can have a better look together. There we go. All right, so we have our oats here. And you can just use like a porridge oats, or if you like using oat bran, go ahead and use that, adding some nice flavour, but also some fibre in there too. We're adding a little bit of white sugar and salt. Always use a sea salt when you're baking. And of course our yeast. So the yeast that I'm using a fresh yeast. But you can use any type, you can use the dry one or the fresh one, that's up to you. And I'm using my mixer today just to make things nice and easy, but you can do all of these steps by hand. Okay. So I'm just going to get this onto my mixer here. And we are going to start mixing it all up. So you want to just start on a low speed to begin with, and then we'll increase this to speed 2, and then mix it until we get what's called a 75% gluten structure. And there's a little trick that you can do to check that. All right, so we're going to leave that mixing away, but while we are waiting, our bread has been out of the oven for about 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes. So it's still really quite warm, but I want to get it out of the loaf pan now. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a tap, and it should come out nicely. Now I've just got my wire wrap here just to cool everything down. Now I know a lot of people love to start jumping in and cutting a slice of the bread right now. But I will warn you, it's best to wait until it's completely cooled, because even when it's at this warm stage, the starches in the bread are still not completely coagulated. So when you start cutting a slice, your bread is going to be kind of like doughy. So wait until it's completely cool, and then when you slice it, you'll get a fantastic crumb structure. And your dough will retain all of that moisture as opposed to it coming out if you slice it right now, okay? So you have to be a bit patient with your bread. Let it cool down for an absolute minimum of 1 hour, but ideally for at least a couple of hours, okay? All right, so our mixer over here. I'm gonna bring you folks over, there we go. So we're going to put this up to speed 2 now. And we're going to let this guy continue to mix until we have our beautiful crumb structure. So with our tin here, I'm going to reuse this one for our next loaf. So what we need to do is you can use some release spray, or I'm using some firm margarine, but you want to make sure you don't use the soft margarine. You want something that's like high fat, because if you use that soft margarine, it might stick. So oil or like this firm margarine works great, or vegetable shortening. And you just want to lightly grease your pan all over so you get your bread to release. Okay. Lovely. Alrighty, so that's all greased up nicely. Now, mixing your dough, once we get to this stage, it takes anywhere from about 6 to 10 minutes. And then what you want to do afterwards is it's going to go into a container. Now, in the recipe, it will say boil and put it into a grease bowl, which you absolutely can do, but I much prefer to put it in a container because I find that you can actually see when the bulk ferment is happening. So that's when the yeast is starting to rise. You can actually see it from the side because this is clear, okay? So all I've just done is I've just greased this with some vegetable oil, and I'm just going to pop that aside while my dough is continually mixing. Okay, that's looking good. It's starting to get a little bit smoother now. So our next step is what I'm going to do. So after this gets to the gluten structure, we're going to put it in the container, and then that's going to bulk proof for 1.5 hours. Now I've already done this for you guys ahead of time, and I'm going to show you. So I have another container over here, and you'll notice, where's my mark? There we go. Can you see that? See that black mark? I got a marker, so when I put my dough into this container, that's where it was. And what you want it to happen is for it to double in size. So because yeast is an organic organism, the rising time can be anywhere from 1 hour to 1.5 hours, 2 hours. You could even push it a little longer. It just depends on some different factors, including the ingredients in your dough, the moisture content, and also the temperature of the room, okay? So this one took me about 1.5 hours to get it doubled, but if you put it in a clear container, then you can clearly see when it's doubled as opposed to putting it in a ball. See, so this one is ready now. So when you do your bulk ferment, you just leave it on your bench. You don't want to put it somewhere too hot or too cold. You want kind of like a room temperature, okay? All right. So now we can start shaping this baby because this is already done and ready to go. So on my bench here, I'm just going to lightly flour. We don't want to go crazy. I know one of the things that a lot of newbies do when they're making bread is they want to continually add more flour. Now you just want to be sparing with the flour, just a little bit. You don't want to continue adding flour. You're like, oh, it's sticky, I've got to add more flour. Just wait, because everything's going to come together. Once that gluten's developed, you don't get a sticky dough. And this should not stick. So this is my smooth side. And we're going to flip this over, and I like that my container's a rectangle because it's going to help us with our shaping, okay? So I'm going to flip this over. And you can see that beautiful activity on the yeast. From the yeast, there's all these little air bubbles. Now I'm going to get a little bit more flour down here. Flour down here. And now we want to start pressing out some of that air, okay? So I'm just using my hands to gently press it down. We don't want to remove all of the air, we're just kind of, just a little bit. So we're just knocking it back slightly, okay? And then I have my tin here. Now what we want to do is I've kind of pressed it out to a rectangle, and the thickness is maybe like about 1 centimeter or so. Now we want to take these sides and bring them to the center. So what I mean is like so. Okay, and then we're going to go on the other side, so it's like doing origami. All right, so see now we've got like a seam all the way down the middle. Just pressing it down a little bit again. You can put a tiny bit more flour. We don't want to drench it in the flour. And then starting from the top, we are going to pull it over. And I'm using my thumbs to kind of press it down and push it back. So we're getting a nice taut sausage. Okay, so we're rolling and then pressing back, rolling, pressing back, rolling, pressing back. Okay? And we want to continue that all the way until we've got a nice sausage shape. All the way to the end, okay? Now, I love to use these bench scrapers to maneuver your dough around. See, we've got this lovely sausage shape here. How's that dough going? That looks good. I've got a little bit of moisture left over from my water and my plant milk, so I'm just dipping my hands in there, and I want to add a little bit of moisture to the top. A little bit of wetness for our oats to stick on the top. Okay? So you can use a little spray, a little spritz with water, that will work as well. And then I have some oats here, and you can use again like whole oats, oatmeal, you can use oat bran, whatever you like. You could even put seeds on this if you don't put oats, but I think it's always a good idea to put on top of your bread what's inside so it tells a story. So if you're selling something like this, you can have it on your bread rack and you know instantly, oh, that's the honey and oat bread. All right, so you just want to stick that down. That's looking good. Stick some on the sides if you like. And then we're going to gently lift this up and pop it into our loaf tin. Okay. And you can put a bit more of that oatmeal on top if you like. Press it in. Okay, then we can use this for the next one. Okie doke. So, once you have your bread in your tin, you want to again bench proof this until it's almost doubled in size. So on a really hot day, this might be 1 hour. On a cooler day, it might be 1.5, 2 hours. So just keep an eye on it. Now the size of loaf tin, I have put it into the recipe. So you can use 2 small loaf tins or 1 large one, or what we call a Pullman loaf. So that's like a standard size. This one is like almost a Pullman loaf. It's actually a little bit smaller, so that's why we get more of a domed effect on our bread. So I'll bring this one back over. See how my bread has very much a domed effect on top? So if you're using what's known as a Pullman loaf pan, you can actually make it completely square if you like, or it's just not going to have as much of a dome because it's just a bit of a different shape. Okay? All right, so this guy is going to I'm just going to proof it just outside, that's fine. So I'm just putting it behind me. Now let's take a look at our dough here, see how it's going with its gluten development. So I'll bring my KitchenAid over and we can take a look. Okay, so when I say 75% gluten structure, that's when we should be able to create a window, or what we call like a window test. It's when we can just start creating it. So you want to grab a little bit of your dough, and it is a good idea if you just wet your hands. So I'm putting a little bit of moisture on my fingers here, just so the dough doesn't stick. And if you can create a window without it breaking, so once we get to that stage where we can just create a window, like so, and you should be able to see the light through it, hello, then we know that our dough is ready. So this dough is ready, I'm happy with that. So I mentioned you can pop this into our container for our bulk proofing. So we're going to have lots of happy people with bread today. I've got 3 loaves of bread that we're making. All right, so yeah, I love these scrapers, they're great. So we've already greased our container here. And what I like to do is just put it into a ball. So see, I'm kind of like tucking the dough underneath itself. So we have a nice smooth edge. And I kind of like to just put a little bit of that oil on top too, okay? So we have a nice smooth edge there. Smooth edge side is going to be facing up. And then I'm just pressing my dough into my container here so it's level. And you can punch it down, that's fine. Just get it into those corners. And then that gives us a great little window where we can see how it's rising. And for this particular container, if you can see where the sticker is actually halfway. So I know when my dough has bulk proofed and it's doubled in size, it's going to be up to this marker. So you can grab yourself like a permanent marker or something and just mark on there on a piece of sticky tape. Or if you have something already on your container, then that's really helpful. So I'm going to pop this behind me and let it proof for about 1.5 to 2 hours, or until it's doubled in size. I'm going to bring you folks back up. So we get our beautiful bread. And here we go again. That is our bread. So let's talk a little bit about baking bread, because I know for a lot of people they get a little bit confused with the baking of the bread, and I can give you some little tips that are really helpful in the bakery kitchen. So some things that are really fantastic too, if you really do enjoy baking bread, or it's something that you want to incorporate every week into your home kitchen or your food service business, you can actually buy the stones, so baking stones, or they might also be called pizza stones. They're very inexpensive. This is something that's fantastic to put into your oven. And when you go into professional bakery, they will have big ovens which have huge stones on the base. And so this is kind of like recreating that in your very own home kitchen. So yeah, like a pizza stone or a baker's stone, you can buy those online. Pop that into your oven when you're preheating it. You want to preheat to 200 degrees. If you don't have a stone, just put a baking sheet inside the oven and just put it upside down, and that gets nice and hot, so you can use that instead. Once it gets to 200 degrees, put a roasting tray on the base of your oven, pop 1/2 cup of boiling water inside, load your bread, turn the temperature down to 180 degrees, and this baby will be done in about, depending on your oven, 35 to 45 minutes. Yeah, and then you'll end up with a beautiful loaf like this. So you'll know when it's ready when it's really beautiful and golden brown. You have a lovely crust on the outside and very soft interior. Okay, so there you have it, guys. Honey and oat sandwich bread at home. So how easy was that? It's not scary, so please give it a try at home. Let me know what you think. And if you are following us on Instagram, you can tag us at Vegan Gastronomy, your bread, so we can share it with the world and share vegan food with everybody. And don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're interested in more bakery training, we actually have chef training programs at vegangastronomy.com for both bakeries, so lots of yeasted breads. And we do also a whole pastry section as well. And yes, we also have savory courses in our vegan cuisine course, and cheese, which is always fantastic to put on your bread, some beautiful vegan cheeses with our chef Stephanie. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Catch us every week on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. and Wednesdays at 10 a.m. and I will see you next week. Bye.